The rain came down hard that November evening, turning the parking lot of the Disciples Clubhouse into a mirror of gray sky and neon. Inside the converted warehouse, the Brotherhood had gathered for their weekly meeting. 23 men ranging from their late 40s to early 70s sat around tables that had seen decades of coffee cups and conversations. The jukebox in the corner played old Creedence, and the smell of motor oil and leather hung in the air like incense. Tommy Ironside Sullivan was just about to call the meeting to order when the door opened. Every head turned and the room went silent. She stood in the doorway, soaked to the bone and shaking. Maybe 30 years old, with dark hair plastered to her face and eyes that held more fear than any person should ever have to carry. Her jacket hung open, and even from across the room Tommy could see she was pregnant. Very pregnant, and the bruises on her face told a story nobody wanted to hear but everyone understood. She took one hesitant step inside, then another. Her shoes squelched on the concrete floor and she wrapped her arms around herself like she was trying to hold her body together through sheer will. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and her voice cracked like thin ice. "I didn't know where else to go." Tommy stood up slowly. He was 62 years old, with silver hair and a beard that reached the middle of his chest. His arms were covered in ink and his hands were scarred from 40 years of working on engines. But when he moved toward her, his steps were gentle as a grandfather approaching a frightened child. "You're safe here, sweetheart," he said softly. "Come on in out of that rain." Behind him his brothers rose as one. Big Danny grabbed a clean shop towel. Marcus pulled out a chair. Old Pete, who'd been a paramedic for 30 years before he retired, moved closer with the careful attention of someone assessing an injury. The woman's legs seemed to give out and Tommy caught her elbow, steadying her as Marcus guided her into the chair. She sat down hard, and then the tears came. Not gentle crying, but the kind of sobs that come from somewhere deep and broken. "My name is Jolie," she managed between gasps. "Jolie Henderson. I walked here from the interstate. My husband, I couldn't stay anymore. Not with the baby coming. I thought maybe I could find help, but everything's closed, and I saw your lights and I just..." Her words dissolved into more tears. Tommy knelt down beside her chair so he could look up into her eyes rather than down at her. It was something he'd learned a long time ago. When someone's been hurt, you make yourself smaller. You give them the power. "Jolie, honey," he said, "my name's Tommy. We're called the Disciples, and I know we probably look scary, but I promise you this is the safest place you could have found tonight. Now, first things first. Are you hurt? Do you need a doctor?" Pete was already checking her pulse, his experienced fingers gentle on her wrist. "She's in shock," he said quietly. "Elevated heart rate but strong. Jolie, can you tell me when you're due?" 3 weeks, she whispered. "Maybe less. I don't know anymore. We moved around so much and I couldn't see a doctor and..." Okay, Tommy said soothingly. "We're going to take care of all that. But right now I need to know. Is he following you, your husband?" Jolie's eyes went wide with terror. "I don't think so. He was passed out when I left. Drunk. But when he wakes up..." She started shaking harder. "You don't understand. Travis doesn't let things go. He'll come looking. He always finds me. Always." Around the room Tommy saw his brothers exchanging glances. These were men who'd spent their lives on the margins. Men who'd seen the ugly underbelly of the world and had chosen to stand against it in their own way. Some had been in the military. Others had been cops or firefighters or just working men who'd watched too many people get hurt and decided to do something about it. "Danny, my friend here is going to get you some dry clothes," Tommy said, gesturing to Big Danny, who was already heading toward the back room. "And then we're going to get some food in you and figure this out together. But I want you to hear me clearly. That man Travis, whoever he is, isn't going to touch you again. You've got 23 guardian angels now, and not a one of us is going to let anything happen to you or that baby." "Why?" Jolie asked, and her voice was so small, so bewildered. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Tommy smiled and it softened his weathered face. "You know, when I was about your age I watched my sister go through something similar. Her husband used to knock her around and she was too scared to leave. Too scared to ask for help. One night it went too far, and by the time anyone knew what was happening it was too late. We lost her." He paused and the room was so quiet you could hear the rain hammering on the roof. "I made a promise that day," Tommy continued. "Promised myself that if I ever had the chance to help someone in her situation I would. No questions asked. No judgment. Just help. And every man in this room has made that same promise for their own reasons. Marcus stepped forward holding a steaming cup of coffee. My mother, he said simply. Watched it for 15 years before she finally found the courage to leave. Wish she'd had somewhere like this to go. My daughter, Pete added. Ex-boyfriend thought he owned her. We helped her disappear. Started a whole new life 3 states away. One by one the brothers shared their stories. Sisters and mothers and daughters and friends. The women they'd loved and lost or saved or wished they could have protected. And as they spoke, Jolie's tears shifted from fear to something else. Something that looked like hope breaking through storm clouds. Danny returned with sweatpants and a warm flannel shirt. One of the brothers had ordered pizza. Another was making phone calls to a women's shelter they'd worked with before. Pete checked Jolie over more thoroughly and announced that both she and the baby seemed stable, though she needed proper medical care soon. As the evening wore on, Jolie told her story in bits and pieces. The way Travis had been charming at first. How it had turned slowly like milk going sour. The isolation. The control. The first time he'd hit her and how sorry he'd been after. The promises to change that never lasted. Getting pregnant and thinking maybe it would make him different. Realizing too late that it only made things worse. I tried to leave twice before, she said quietly. Once he found me at my sister's house. Sent her to the hospital with a broken arm for hiding me. After that everyone was too scared to help. The second time I made it to a shelter, but they were full, and while I was waiting in the lobby he showed up. Somehow he always knows where I am. Not this time, Tommy said firmly. We know people. Good people. There's a network of folks who help women disappear when they need to. New identity, new location, the works. It takes a little time, but we can make it happen. In the meantime, you'll stay here where we can keep watch. Jolie looked around the clubhouse at the concrete floors and the motorcycle parts and the pictures of bikes and brothers on the walls. Here, she asked. We've got a couple of rooms in the back, Tommy explained. Used to be offices before we bought this place. They're not fancy, but they're warm and dry, and there's a lock on the door. You'll have privacy. And there's always someone here 24/7. Club business and whatnot. What if Travis comes? Tommy's face hardened just a fraction. Then we'll handle it. Legally and properly, but firmly. We've got connections with good cops. People who'll do things the right way. But I promise you this. He won't get past that door. For 3 days Jolie stayed at the clubhouse while the disciples worked behind the scenes. They contacted Sarah Martinez, a lawyer who specialized in domestic violence cases and who worked with their club pro bono. They reached out to Father Mackenzie at St. Catherine's, who ran an underground railroad of sorts for abuse victims. They gathered money from each member to help with Jolie's fresh start. And they watched. Day and night there were always at least 4 brothers at the clubhouse, armed with nothing more than their presence and their phones, ready to call the authorities if needed. On the 3rd evening, Travis Henderson pulled up in a battered pickup truck. He was a wiry man in his mid-30s with mean eyes and the kind of swagger that came from never being held accountable. 2 of his buddies climbed out with him, both looking like trouble. Tommy met them at the door, flanked by Big Danny and Marcus. Behind them the rest of the brotherhood stood in a line, their arms crossed, their faces impassive. I know she's here, Travis snarled. That's my wife and my kid, and I want them back. Can't help you, Tommy said evenly. Nobody here by that description. Don't lie to me, old man. Travis stepped forward, jabbing a finger toward Tommy's chest. I've got rights. That's my property. Property, Tommy repeated, and his voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. Did you just call your pregnant wife property? You know what I mean. Travis backpedaled slightly. Just bring her out and there won't be any trouble. The thing is, Tommy said, there isn't anyone here who wants to see you. But I'll tell you what. You turn around and leave right now, and we won't call the cops about the outstanding warrant for your arrest in Oklahoma. Travis went pale. How did you? We're very good at finding things out, Tommy said. Assault, battery, violation of a restraining order. Looks like you've been a busy man. Now me and my brothers here, we believe in second chances. So here's yours. You get in that truck, you drive away, and you never come looking for Jolie again. You do that and maybe those warrants stay between us. And if I don't, then we make a phone call and you spend the night in jail. Then another night, and all the nights after that until your court date. Your choice. For a long moment Travis stood there weighing his options. You could see the rage in his eyes, fighting with self-preservation. His buddies were already backing toward the truck, sensing which way this was going to fall. "This isn't over," Travis spat. "Yes son, it is," Tommy said softly. "It really is." They watched the truck peel out of the parking lot spraying gravel. Tommy pulled out his phone and made a call. Within 20 minutes a police cruiser arrived and Officer Janet Chen, someone the club had worked with on charity events, took down all the information about Travis Henderson and his threats. "We'll make sure he gets picked up on those warrants," she promised. "And we'll file a restraining order for Jolie. He comes near her again, he's going away for a long time." 2 weeks later, on a cold December morning, Jolie went into labor. Pete and Marcus rushed her to the hospital, where she delivered a healthy baby girl weighing 7 pounds 3 ounces. She named her Hope. The disciples took turns visiting, bringing flowers and teddy bears and home-cooked meals. They'd gathered enough money to pay for 3 months of rent in a new apartment in a different city, where Father Mackenzie had arranged a job for Jolie at a bakery run by a kind woman named Ellen, who asked no questions and offered grace. On the day Jolie left, Sarah Martinez had finalized the legal work. Travis was in custody in Oklahoma facing multiple charges. The restraining order was ironclad, and Jolie Henderson was on her way to becoming Jolie Walsh with a fresh start and a new life. Tommy walked her to the car carrying little Hope in her carrier. The baby was bundled in a pink blanket that Danny's wife had crocheted. "I don't know how to thank you," Jolie said, tears streaming down her face. "You saved my life. Both our lives. You just live well," Tommy told her. "Raise that little girl to know she's precious and loved. That's all the thanks we need." She hugged him hard, and then she was gone, driving off into a future that finally held promise instead of fear. That night back at the clubhouse, Tommy sat with his brothers, drinking coffee and talking about ordinary things. Bikes that needed work, upcoming charity rides, someone's grandson graduating high school. The easy, comfortable talk of men who'd found family in each other. But on the wall next to the jukebox there was a new photograph. Jolie holding baby Hope, with Tommy standing beside them, both smiling. Another life changed. Another promise kept. Because sometimes the scariest looking people have the biggest hearts, and the roughest hands know how to be gentle when it matters most, and a warehouse full of old bikers can be exactly the sanctuary someone needs. In a world that often felt cold and uncertain, the disciples knew something important. That kindness doesn't have a dress code. That love shows up in unexpected places. And that sometimes angels wear leather and ride Harleys and spend their evenings proving that everyone deserves a second chance at happiness.